So this is at the end of the application, and these are the different goals that you can choose from. And you can see it's got really clear guidelines for how to actually write your pre and your post data. So you can see here, these are the two goals we chose. So one of the goals, sorry, increase the quantity of written work produced within a specific time span. And so it says, what is it looking at? So word count, number of sentences and paragraphs, and it gives you very clear guidelines. So use a realistic time measure for the student, for example, 20 to 30 minutes. Calculate the rate. So for example, how many words per minute, how many sentences, how many paragraphs were in that piece of work, and how does this compare with expectations for their current age. And so you do that for your pre-data and for your post-data, and it super clearly shows the difference that it's made. So we'll go into that in a little bit more detail soon. But for now, number 7 is what does the equipment need to do to support the student's learning goals? So the key features of it. So it needs to allow Hayes to have his work read back to him, so that we kind of talked about this earlier. Have a tool for word banks. So you're just explaining what the technology needs to have. He needed to be able to speak into the device and have it write out work. He needed to use headphones so that he could hear, because there was a lot of background noise in his classroom. Need to have a microphone for clarity of his own speech. Have a dedicated keyboard, and so he could use the touch screen. Needed some support with comprehension of vocabulary and allow for adaptable environments. So based on those characteristics, we chose Chromebook with touchscreen, read and write add-on, headphone with microphone, and he just preferred to use a mouse as well as a touchscreen, so we got him a mouse. And then we explained why the other technology wasn't relevant. So we did originally think about an iPad because his teacher thought it would be a lot easier for him to get access to, but in the end we just got a sticker with his details and put it on his Chromebook, and it was fine. He was very independent at logging in. And then we decided on Clicker Writer because it was a lot more discreet, and for his age, he didn't want to stand out from everybody else. So yeah, that's why we came to that decision. And now finally we get to the actual trial data. So you need to attach 2 samples of work, either photos or just the samples themselves. One using the original tools, the pre-data, and one using the assistive tech. And remember to include these when you send your application in. So when completing this section, you need to ensure that you include the following information, both pre and post trial. So what is the learning task? And summarize what you've observed and time taken. Describe how they use the technology and the tools. This is really important, especially in the post. So say for read and write, if they're only using speech to text, text to speech, they don't necessarily need read and write because Google Docs does that anyway. So you have to prove that they're using all of the tools within the software or hardware that you've got. And that has to all come from this data just in this table. So describe how they use the technology, what additional support was required. So you can talk about, for example, in the pre-data, they needed the teacher to explain the work, to give examples, to write keywords down, and then describe their on-task behaviour. And it has to be measurable as well. So that's why it's good to follow those prompts. And then you've got at the top here, your pre-trial. So you need to explain what tools were used. So pen and paper. And then for the post-trial, what tools were used. So the hardware was the Chromebook and the headset, and the software was the read and write. And then how long did your trial go on for? And you can see in here, I've included his example. Sorry, it's a little bit little, but maybe I can read it to you. So in the pre-trial, and I tried to follow it so it looks the same, so it's really easy to compare. So pre-trial writing, there was no title, but it was about Christmas, and post-trial writing task was all about seats. Hayes had 20 minutes to write about his topic of his choice independently. He had 5 minutes to plan, in which we talked about ideas and what he would write about, then 15 minutes to write. I gave prompts such as, can you add any more? And have you checked your spelling and punctuation? And his words per minute, he did 80 words in 15 minutes, so he did 5 words a minute. Sentences, no punctuation, so it was hard to decide how many sentences, but there were about 5 sentences, and they were all simple or run-on. And there was 1 paragraph. Age expectations, so comparatively to his age group, this was well below expectations, which would usually be 2 to 3 paragraphs with a variety of sentence structures and types within that time frame. Oops. Oh no. There we go. Oral recount comparison, so this is of much lower quality and amount to what he could recount. He speaks well and uses full sentences when speaking though. But fatigue, so he becomes very tired after about 6 to 7 minutes of writing, and he was very slow when he wrote as well. And he started to take bigger and bigger pauses after that 6-minute mark. Whereas you can see in the post-trial, so he had the same time frame to plan, which is important. It's quite good to give about the same time frame for the pre and the post data. And he had time to research and used the picture tool on Read and Write to help if he didn't understand a word. So I'm showing how he's using that software. He used a mixture of speech to text and the prediction writing tool on Read and Write to create his 3 paragraphs. So wherever you can, try and fit in how they've used each tool, because it can only go in this part. He likes the prediction tool because it gives him vocabulary. So I've said words per minute, 185 in 15 minutes, 12 per minute. Number of sentences were 20 and they were varied in length. He had 3 main paragraphs, each one contained 5 to 8 sentences, and the writing aligned much better with a peer typically his age. Yeah, so you can just see it's showing very clearly the improvements that he's made. And I used these prompts, which were from that table, for this. And then this was the second goal, to increase independence. And so again, we used these prompts. So all about Christmas and all about seeds. So it was the same 2 pieces, but I just used the different criteria. So in this one, 73 out of the 80, so 78% of the words were spelled correctly, but most of those words were either CVC or CVCC, so there were no complex words in it. I had to prompt a lot of ideas before he got started, and then he ran out of ideas around 6 to 7 minutes instead of using the full 20 minutes. He slowed down a lot. He became easily distracted. He looked out the window often. And even with prompting for spelling mistakes and punctuation, he couldn't do that independently. And whereas if you look at the other one, 100% the words are correct. And he used a lot more complex words such as different passion fruit wasting. He was able to complete his research independently, read through some information online. He's learned to use the Simplify tool on Read and Write to make the reading information more easily, and he used text-to-speech tool in Read Write when researching on the web, as well as the Read Write tool that shows what each word means and gives a picture. This helped him to identify which words and information he wanted to use independently without the teacher prompting him. He was then able to sit for a full 15 minutes and wrote 3 paragraphs. He used a mixture of typing and speech to text. So again, it's showing the different use of the different software tools. He was only prompted once to edit, and he used the Read Write prediction tool a lot when writing to help him create sentences and find alternative words. I also, because they quite like you to include some qualitative data, because this is all quantitative, measurable, this is more qualitative, so observations. So I observed another writing session in which the teacher had to prompt Hayes. Hayes asked questions 5 times in 30 minutes, as well as the teacher spending 5 minutes one-to-one with Hayes after whole class instruction, writing keywords on a whiteboard before he could begin writing. So you can see just how much involvement was needed before. And then I observed a whole class writing session after, and after the main instructions were given, Hayes went straight and worked on his Chromebook. He used his prediction and picture tools on his Read and Write to complete his writing. He didn't need to ask for assistance or be prompted the whole time, and he was confident in his ability to use his device. He had a lot of input, so it's really important that you get that teacher aid time so that they can teach them how to use these tools within that trial time, so that you can confidently say, yes, he's confident and more independent to use this. And then he used the readback tool to listen to his sentences and edit. And then I just added here, in the short time he has had the technology, he has picked up on many of the tools and has continued to grow in confidence every day. His teacher aide has been working through each tool with him one-to-one. His teacher has been giving him times during the week to practice these tools. And he has been implementing these tools into his everyday writing. You can also see I've bolded, you don't have to do this, but I've bolded some of the key parts, so it shows them these are the tools that he's been using and that they've been effective. And then below you can add other comments. So no new information should come in these other comments. You shouldn't be bringing in new information at this point. All of the information needs to be in the in this table here beforehand. So this is supporting comments. So the teacher said, the more Hayes uses his device, the more he enjoys literacy, and he has the tools to feel successful now. Those kind of comments. And then the student said, I find the tech easy to use because I can talk on the microphone. The best part for me is the reading thing where it reads to you so I can hear the words and check if they make sense. And the other part is the edit face, which is the prediction tool. So if the word isn't right, it has a bunch of others I can pick from. I like the picture tool where it shows a picture of the word I don't understand. Yeah, so it's just to support it, to say that it's made a difference, especially if you can get student voice and they can say what a difference it's made for them and what they enjoy about it. That's really good. And then we're up to section 9, which is literally you just need to either get a quote for all the different things that you're going to use, so or you just say the number that it'll have on it from the ministry, what it is. So read write add-on, I got a quote directly from them which you need to attach to the application, and you need to say how much it is including GST. Whereas all of my others in this one particularly were from the ministry, so I just had to include what they were. And as I said before, if it's from the ministry, they just get to keep it and they don't need to pass it back and buy any extras. Whereas if you're using, say, an RTLB device to trial, or I don't know what else they'd be using, but yeah, you then need to go through the school, give them the quotes, and they can then buy the devices themselves. And then section 10, so decide who will be responsible for monitoring the device in the school, how it will be kept safe, and whether it will stay at school or go home. And it needs to be discussed with the whole team. So usually the IT support will monitor the device and make sure it's still working. And when it's not being used, it's good to just decide where to keep it. And then, decide whether you want it to go home. So it could go home during school holidays if they've got lots of work and projects. It could go home, it may need to go home all the time, each day, to complete essential homework. Again, you need to decide if your child is capable of that, or it can just stay at school forever, all the time, and it doesn't go home. At least then you know they're never going to forget it, and they've got it at school. Remember, once they get this device, they have it until they're 18. So permission, you also need to get these permission slips. I try and get these done in the middle of the trial or at the beginning, because otherwise it comes to the last day and you actually need parental permission, you need principal permission, and then these applications are always due on the first Tuesday of each month between February and November. So November is the last month you can do it. So make sure you get your permission slips done, because I've been caught before where I've only had 2 days to get my permission slip and run around like a headless chicken. And then remember, if it's your first or second application, it needs to be peer reviewed. So you need to get somebody that's already done them to have a look through and just give you any tips and helpful hints. And then they need to sign it as well to say they've already looked through it and that they're fine for you to hand it in. I found Di is really helpful as well. She can't be your peer reviewer, but you can send it through to her and say, can you just have a look at this before I actually hand it in, and let me know if there's anything I need to change. She was the one that picked up that I had it on the wrong form originally as well. So then I've included a checklist which you can tick off to make sure you've done all the steps. And finally, this is the information for the Tauranga Moana Assistive Tech application lady called Di Edlin, and that's her email and her numbers, and you can contact her with any help. She's been really useful for asking for different technology to use and different apps and what we can trial if you're not sure. So give her a call anytime. So hopefully that was helpful, and if you've got any questions you can ask me as well. Kia ora, thanks everybody.